When I saw the trailer for Avowed, I was ecstatic, as it looked very similar to Skyrim, with everyone online saying it would be Obsidian's take on the game. As a Skyrim enjoyer myself, I was excited to get my hands on it since Obsidian was the developer of the much-loved Fallout New Vegas. Surely this will be the modern Skyrim, right? Right? The story is essentially summed up as you are the special boy who God and the Emperor chose and everyone loves you, so you're gonna go save the world because you're awesome. This even affects character interactions as NPCs will just randomly start glazing you out of nowhere.
That's the Imperial envoy you're talking to. Show some respect.
The companions are mostly annoying and never truly developed. Kai was probably the best character if only because he was inoffensive and had a few jokes, but much like the rest of the companions, there was a lot of telling rather than showing. As an example, early on we hear a story from Marius about how Kai wouldn't kill a guy who stole their rations, which is supposed to tell us that Kai doesn't kill, but why not have a cutscene play showing this scene when we go to sleep, therefore showing us rather than simply monologuing about it. Marius on the other hand is a douchebag that is mean to everyone, and I gather that's supposed to be his arc, that we find out he pushes people away for his protection as he mistrusts everyone, but this rarely ever comes up and he remains mean to most people outside of a few moments where his arc is highlighted. Also, PSA developers, do not make up your own swear words. I swear this is the most cringe-worthy thing in the entire game. If I hear Marius call someone a nimdoot one more time, I'm going to lose it. He sounds so lame, just listen.
Don't know anything about me, you Adira nimdoot. So maybe go back and take another blessed day sip.
Giada is inoffensive and completely bland with zero arc. She doesn't even have a quest attached to her, she is simply unremarkable. Yatsli is a bitch. I don't like this weird flirty furry. She gets everyone into trouble, is a nuisance, and gets super upset when you don't pick the choices she likes. She has a weird obsession with vases and gets mad at us whenever we tell her to run her own life, since apparently she needs us to validate everything she does as if we are her absentee father. The last annoying thing the companions do is randomly interrupt people we are talking to and add unwanted, unneeded, and uninteresting comments.
Put the fear of the gods in him.
Seems more likely you'll have to punch some sense into him.
Shut up, Marius! There isn't even a way to lose companions. You can make every wrong decision and they will just go all tsundere and be like, well, just know I don't like it. We can even easily tell who the next companion is going to be, as the current companions just suddenly start glazing this character as if the devs are saying, please like them, please, 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 please like them. But once again, they're telling us cool things about them rather than showing it. Like, look at Yatsli's intro. We have to save her because she is useless, and then we have to get the vase down because she can't. Yet later we are supposed to believe she is some powerful mage? Like, what if we had a cutscene of her saving someone else or killing mobs while she TPs down from getting the vase herself, showing that she is competent and cool? Lastly, your choices don't matter, as they don't affect the gameplay in any way whatsoever. Instead, the few choices you get only have impact via an endgame cutscene. Not to mention some of the choices have flawed premises from the beginning, and there's an obvious choice we could do that isn't an option, or only one of the options made sense until there's a hidden factor they didn't tell us about. Avowed story tries very hard to comment on the issues in society and the world, but they couldn't pick which topics they wanted to discuss and ended up talking about so many topics and ended up feeling as though you were talking to a caveman who just discovered fire. The game mentions all different kinds of ideologies, such as environmental conservation, religious zealots, and colonialism. These all fall flat as the game only ever talks about them in a few points, and you're always spoon-fed the narrative of who's good and who's bad, never letting you just think for yourself or providing both sides of the argument. Let's look at colonialism. Your emperor is trying to make peaceful relations with the living lands to establish law and order in a society of bandits and refugees, killing each other while fighting off nature itself. This topic is barely addressed, and as quickly as it is brushed aside, a new ideology is brought in and given the same treatment. This issue bleeds into the plot as well, as the story feels messy and distracted as they are trying to fit in all these different ideologies first, rather than writing an interesting story that engages the player. Avowed is constantly telling us cool things that happen rather than showing us, and has so many ideologies crammed in that the story is bogged down and boring, in addition to the ideologies not being given enough time to have proper commentary. Overall, the game is getting 0.5 for the story, as it has a few interesting moments, but overall so distracted, the choices aren't properly thought through because the devs so badly wanted to say something profound, that they lack any impactfulness or difficulty. Avowed's gameplay is shockingly bad. I mean, simply comparing it to Skyrim, a game from 2011, it's unbelievable that they have managed to not make any meaningful improvements whatsoever, and in some areas they've even downgraded from Skyrim. The character tree is split into 3 trees as opposed to Skyrim's 3 categories with 18 skill trees split across them. Avowed skill trees are the fighter skill tree, focusing on heavy weapon fighting, which feels like hitting things with a wet noodle before getting winded after a few swings and having to run away while your stamina regen. Even at max resolve, you can only get 4 charged swings before being winded. The ranger tree focuses on light weapons, shield, and ranged weapons. This is objectively the best class as it does the most damage, provides range, and has better abilities. However, it is very frustrating to use stamina for a gun which was explicitly created to conserve your stamina, as a bow requires strength and stamina to use. The mage tree is surprisingly unimpressive since the game only has 26 spells, when compared to Skyrim that is a drop in a bucket, as Skyrim had 85 spells on launch. Not to mention the spells are mostly just reskins of each other that do different status effects, except every effect but electrified and frozen are just dot damage, and electrified is just dot damage in an AoE. This makes the spells feel unimpactful and boring. The abilities you get from the classes are pretty boring and annoying to use as well. The game employs a time stop mechanic with an ability wheel that feels clunky to sift through, and the hotbar only has 6 slots, not even a full bar, let alone an additional bar. As for the abilities themselves, they are mostly buffs and stims, with 1 useless movement ability and 2 or 3 actives, like the fighter's lunge and spin, or the ranger's root and summon bear. As for the looting part of the game, they have somehow made the exploration so boring I would rather explore a cave called the Devil's Buttcrack. I know what is in each chest I find, as it will always be just the same mats to upgrade my weapon every single time. Speaking of upgrading my weapon, this mechanic is stupid. The game has this mechanic where the enemies have a level to them, and if your weapons and armor aren't equal or higher in level, you take extra damage and they take reduced damage. This is done for 2 main reasons. 1, it makes you stuck with one weapon and you can't switch to a lower level weapon because otherwise you won't be able to kill things. 2, this makes the enemies boring as there is no new enemy types, and instead of changing the enemies to be interesting to fight, they simply just start resisting you, and become tankier instead of making them resistant to damage types, allowing the player to experiment with all different kinds of weapons. When you have a lower level weapon, the only real way to do any damage is via the finishers, which suck too, as there are only 4 finishers in the game, 1 for stabbing weapons like swords, spears, and daggers, 1 for guns, 1 for wands, and 1 for bludgeoning weapons and axes for some reason. The game also has cooking, lockpicking, and enchanting mechanics, which are extremely shallow. Cooking is essentially just click for stat bonus or health and essence regen. Enchanting is for unique weapons, weapons that have a niche ability attached to them, which you can enchant or upgrade into 1 or 2 choices. The biggest travesty of this game is the lockpicking. Everyone remembers the lockpicking game from Skyrim. It felt skill-based. Well, for this game, the devs make you pay the lockpick tax like they are a troll that lives underneath the chest. The gameplay is uneventful and has some real annoyances like the leveling mechanics, skill tree balancing, ability wheel, and lack of gameplay diversity. However, at least it's not glitchy, it can just be obnoxious in certain aspects. So I will be giving it 1 point to gameplay, as the gameplay is never obtrusive, just occasionally annoying. The design of the game is fine, mostly unremarkable, but the areas are cool and the graphics are good. There aren't many major graphical issues, the only notable things I saw were objects like necklaces and skirts phasing into people's bodies. As for the level design, the world feels almost barren. No people, no random encounters to speak of, only a few, and most of them are non-interactable, which is a problem that heavily plagues the game. Most of the NPCs are not only immortal, but provide no consequences or interactions. You can steal anything from anyone and they won't care. You can't hit anyone, and most of the NPCs you can't even talk to. This game shows the definition of NPC. It really gives the Truman Show experience. The only neat thing the game does design-wise is enabling ice magic to freeze water into platforms. As for any other puzzles, they boil down to hitting things with magic, or your companion's magic if you don't have any alternative. This is fine for most barriers, like the brambles for example, you can throw a firebomb or use a spell from Kai, but for Yahtzee's illusions, you need her for them, meaning she has to be in your party while exploring, or you have to run back to camp to trade out a member for Yahtzee to use her magic. Overall, the design of the game is fine, but the world is empty and lifeless. The puzzles are non-existent as they are essentially just hitting things with a grenade or asking your companions to do it for you. Long gone are the days of using carryable objects to get hints at codes for puzzles. This is why the game is getting no points for design. The soundtrack is completely unremarkable. It's just generic fantasy music you would hear at a D&D game. There are no standout tracks, it's not obtrusive, just no bangers. As for the voice acting, it's fine. They could have used better direction as it is a bit jarring when people of the same race and village have entirely different accents.
At the gate. I heard your kit blew an old ruin to bits.
What Giada's going through right now. with her parents and all that.
A little more emotion in certain scenes would be an improvement as well. Overall, the game will be getting 0.5 for sound design, as the voice acting is fine for the most part, and the music fits the visuals but isn't remarkable. The post-game is abysmal. The only thing to do is any side quests you didn't complete before beating the game, except for the side quests they take away from you for beating the game, so all you're left is with crappy quests with crappier dialogue. In contrast, Skyrim has quests with the Thieves Guild and the Dark Brotherhood, entire quest chains that people love and remember even more than the main story. Overall, Avowed is 0 points for post-game, as there really isn't one since the quest gets you no reward except crappy dialogue, like learning about a chick having sex with a lizard person. Avowed is a game that could have been great, but due to flawed ideologies failed to deliver a fun experience. The primary issue that Avowed struggled with was the devs themselves, as shown by the tweets where the devs proclaimed their ecstasy that people were mad at their game, which should never be the goal for game devs. Games are supposed to make people happy and be an escape from otherwise mundane lives, but this game seems to have been made with the exact opposite intention. This led to the game having too many ideologies crammed in, and the game being so focused on saying something that the gameplay suffered and the story ended up saying about as much as a 4-year-old explaining thermodynamics. Avowed's gameplay is boring and repetitive, despite being made over 10 years after Skyrim. The sound design and art design have minor issues, but are overall unremarkable, and the world is empty and lacks consequence. The idea of a post-game has been completely forgotten. So that's 0.5 for story, 1 for gameplay, 0 for design, 0.5 for sound design, and 0 for post-game, totaling 2 points. The game completely fails to live up to Skyrim in any way, shape, or form, and it's truly sad to see a great premise fall to the wayside like this. In conclusion, just go play Skyrim. That's it for Avowed. If you liked the review, please hit the like button and feel free to leave a comment. If you want to be notified for the next video, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. That's it for me. I'll see you in the next one.